No matter how old you are, there's probably a lot of things that you do now, or maybe you don't do now, that younger you would be thinking, why are you doing this, or why aren't you doing that? And yeah, those questions could apply to a bunch of things in life and probably the important things of life, but what about how you write code, or how you think about code, or how you think about writing code? On today's episode, we're going to be reading a short little article from Brent called I Don't Write Code the Way I Used to. That's Brent Roos, Brent, B-R-E-N-D-T, on GitHub at Stitcher.io, who was also creating the Tempest framework in PHP. So Stitcher.io, Brent, I don't write code the way I used to. August 7th, 2024. Just some housekeeping before we get reading the article. If you commented on the giveaway that I ran last week on that YouTube video, be sure to check your YouTube comments because I'm going to be replying to the winners to show how to claim your prize. So let's get back into it. I don't write code the way I used to. I turned 30 last week and it made me realize I've been coding for more than half of my life now. I took a moment to reflect on my programming skills after a decade and realized that 20-year-old me would probably facepalm if he'd seen me write code today. First, I gave up on most abstractions. Oh, how young me loved them. For present me, abstractions are becoming more and more of a rarity. I just find that 95% of problems don't need abstractions. They are better to be solved in place. I remember I reached for abstractions whenever a problem could possibly need it, instead of when I actually needed it. I don't do that anymore. Second, I find myself liking a functional mindset more and more. It's just simpler. I find it comfortable to split data and functionality to keep my code as flat as possible. I'm still using classes and objects in their internal state, but overall these objects are looking more and more like functions. Data goes in, data comes out. That's it. Something I'm less proud of. Testing is still a struggle. I don't really understand why. I know testing makes my life easier. I know it's good in the long run, and still there's always a barrier to cross. In part, I think it's because of the friction and overhead that comes with testing frameworks. The setup, mocking, faking data. It's really a shame that testing doesn't come more natural to me. I force myself to do it, and it always pays off, but still. Next, I'm using less fancy shorthands. I don't care about clever one-liners anymore. I'd prefer to write a verbose if-else statement over cramming the same functionality in one line of code. Less is not always more. Another realization, I can't live without static analysis anymore. I remember using Sublime for the first 2 or 3 years of my professional programming career, but I don't understand how I made that work. Have I become lazy? Too reliant on my tools? I don't think so. I think I've optimized my tool chain to serve me better over the years. Let the computer do the boring things for me. I'll focus on the things I like. Finally, I'm still using PHP. It has its quirks, it's old, it shows, I know, and yet it's okay. It gets the job done. In fact, I like the language much more today than a decade ago. I think the past 10 years have been great for PHP. Here's to the next 10. Cheers. I also turned 30 this year, but I have not been coding professionally for that long. In fact, I haven't necessarily had a job coding professionally. I've coded in jobs, but that hasn't been my full-time job, is just coding professionally. And so I can agree and become familiar with a lot of these sentiments, but at the same time, it's very interesting to me, the shift that takes place, especially when I myself haven't quite figured out how I like to write code specifically, mostly because I feel like I'm still learning how to write code better. And I've talked about this at length in other episodes, but I love just writing things and just, putting code on the page and then figuring out, okay, was that the best way to do that? Was that not the best way to do that? Etc. Especially when Brent talks about static analysis, for example. A lot of people with Livewire Volt, for example, most people don't want to use Livewire Volt because there isn't much tooling around it yet, in the sense that you don't really have static analysis because it's not a PHP file, it's a Blade file, but there's PHP in it, and then you don't have any kind of like type hints or any kind of like autocomplete. And yet I love it mostly just because I've learned to write better. And I think AI also helps me a lot with that aspect of just helping me write the stuff that I would have taken a few extra keystrokes to write. But I think the thing that really stuck out to me with an article like this is usually when you get older, you think less about, what what is other people thinking about the code I write? Instead, how does it feel to you? It's like that vibe test of, are you writing code because you want to write code? Or in this case, he talked about how he's focusing on the things that he likes when it comes to writing code. And that's the reason why I love doing the things I do, whether it's making videos or building a program or building a project or application, or even just like short little demos that I make for videos. Most of the time I learn so much because I'm doing the things that I like, because I'm being less fancy about things. I'm trying to just get things on the page. I'm trying to understand concepts, and so I'm having to deep dive into certain things, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily deep diving so that it can be this beautiful code that comes out in the end and that is the forefront or the epitaph of a company's project. A lot of the things that I do, a lot of the way that I wrote code is just so that I can figure things out and so I can learn, but so I can make something that I think is fun at the time. And that's how I've learned. That's how I've learned how to do the things that I do. When it comes to testing, that's also a struggle for me, just because I probably haven't needed to. And I know that most of the time I have this video on the Laravel official channel where I write my first test ever. I'd never written a test before that. I haven't actually written a test since then, but it's because I think I haven't been in that scenario where I have to be writing these codes to a specific standard within a company. Well, I've put in like specific PRs at different projects and companies that I've been at. It's never, okay, I need to fit into this particular coding style, or I need to make sure I do this with this team. It's usually, hey, here's like a quick 20, 30 lines of code that I can just get by with. And so I think as I grow older, and again, I just turned 30 this year as well, as I grow older, whether it's life, code, creation, videos, anything that I do, I've learned that I like to prioritize what makes the most sense and is just fun for me. And usually those are things that I'm, continuing to learn, continue to improve upon, continue to expand in my skill set. And have taken that shift away from the stuff that I think looks best, or the stuff that I think others might like more. And even just this YouTube channel in general, this podcast and everything that I'm doing, it's not really because I think it will be good content. I think it will be, it is, but at the same time, it's not because it's first because I like to do it. Second, because I like to learn. I think it improves my personal skill set. And then third, it's just because I think the more I do those first two, the better it becomes. And so I think a lot of the things that Brent was talking about here is really just less about what the outlook is on his coding style, maybe what others had, or maybe that he had personally, and more about just doing the things that he likes to do. Focus on the things I like. So as you grow older, as you build, make, create things, as you hopefully learn PHP, learn Laravel, as you subscribe to this channel or follow on the podcast, what are the things that you're doing to make sure that you're improving what you like, rather than just improving the things that you hope other people like? So do that as you build, as you make. Keep creating.